so many topics. We're going to talk about gay marriage and abortion and immigration and our presidential candidates. So what should we start with?
Well, immigration is we always start off on immigration, so might as well go with that. I haven't heard much about immigration lately. It's not in the news a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. Depends on the news sources. I hear it a lot because my news sources are a lot of websites, conservative places that talk about immigration every day.
Yeah.
and some immigration lawyers inform me from the other side. But the presidential candidates have not been saying really detailed things that you can chew on. One thing I've been focusing on is I've noticed that the experts who say that immigration is harmful, cuts down our jobs, takes away jobs from citizens, drives down citizen wages, exports our money to their families back home, trashes the economy, saps our welfare budgets. All of these are economic complaints. Not a single one of them has a degree in economics. And I found out that the immigration hearings in the Senate, there was one March 17th, and then the first one in 2 years, back in 2013, there was 5 hearings with 39 expert witnesses. And out of those 7 witnesses in March 17th, not one had a degree in economics. Out of the 39 witnesses in 2013, 2 did. So I've been trying to badger Senator Ted Cruz, who is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee that holds these immigration hearings, and Senator Grassley, our Iowa Grassley, who's head of that committee. Why don't, next time you have a hearing, here's an idea, why don't you have someone that's actually trained in the subject of economics, if you're going to be talking about economic issues? And so far I need a lot of help getting them to respond because they're not responding to me. I communicate with them up to a point I get that question asked, and then I don't hear more.
Yep. Well, I think economics are going to be a big topic coming up in the upcoming election, and I think immigration is much more connected to economics than most people believe. I think it might be popular belief among people in America that economics is bad for the economy, but I tend to agree that it has to be good for the economy. I mean, our entire economy has been built on immigration. We're all children of immigrants, and it seems to spawn or spark the economy and help the economy. So I would think that it's going to be maybe economics will play a bigger part in the elections this time around. And what I've heard lately is, I don't know, I hear a lot of things about immigration that sometimes I think it has to be made up. It can't be true. They're talking about how Obama wants to buy plane tickets for, a whole bunch of immigrants and bring them into the country on.
Yeah, you've heard that one.
Yeah.
Did you see the whole story about that?
I did not see the whole story. But
the whole headline, huh?
The whole headline just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. I bypassed that headline also, did not read the entire article, and because it is ridiculous. But I can imagine what it's talking about is refugees.
Right.
And as other headlines say, Muslim jihadist refugees from Syria and and other countries that are quite hostile to whose predominant Muslim populations are quite hostile to the United States. Hopefully the people who come here of those Muslims are the Muslims of their populations that are most tolerant of our system of government and our freedoms and our peace and our freedom, including our freedom of religion to worship Jesus Christ without being killed for it, etc.
Right. Well, I think that,
and of course, refugees are flown here
right.
at U.S. expense.
Right.
So,
Well, first of all, I mean, there are a lot of countries in the Middle East right now who are absorbing huge numbers of refugees. And they wouldn't be refugees if they weren't in danger of being killed or imprisoned or some other fate because of ISIS and the whole, uprising in the Middle East. And I mean, we've taken on large numbers of refugees before. We do it from all other countries. We did it in Vietnam, and I mean, we did it after World War II. We bring in the Bosnians after the war in Bosnia, and we don't really know on a case-by-case individual basis who these people are and if they are tolerant of our system of government or if they do hate America. They're escaping their situation back home, coming here, and of course they're going to bring their ideals, along with them.
the tragedy is that we take so few refugees. We have our quotas, our immigration quotas, strict numbers set by the president on how many can come. I don't remember if it's per country or per total. I think it's per country. And as for knowing where they are individually, there are interviews done of refugees, and I've talked to a few people, a few refugees that have gone through the process, and apparently there seems to be a focus on trying to determine if the people are criminals or violent, or if they're sympathetic with terrorists.
Well,
So I don't know how much you can do in an interview. Obviously, as human
Right.
beings are limited. In addition to the interviews, there are additional background checks, but I'm sure that's it's limited how much you can do that with hostile governments.
right. And what about the assimilation process? There needs to be follow-ups. People who immigrate to this country need to be assimilated. You can't just bring them here and throw them into the population and expect them to become model Americans. They need to be taught what our beliefs are before they can really understand them and embrace them.
The citizenship process is people are required to learn a few basics about our form of government in order to be a citizen. But be brought here and live, there's not there's no immediate pressure to learn those kinds of things. Although we should have an immigration attorney on here. It seems like you have refugees like from Sudan come here and they're given 5 years to become a citizen. Wouldn't that be a dream for people coming from Mexico? Or even if your immediate family is a citizen, it takes an average 12 years.
Yep.
But there's a 5-year deadline which can be extended. But while the pressure on them to try and become a citizen as soon as they can is that they can be deported for what we would consider not really serious offenses.
And those are citizens from from Mexico, or from.
I was talking about people from Sudan.
Okay.
Any,
So
any refugees.
Okay, a refugee from
anyone
Sudan
with
can be
refugee
deported.
status. Yeah. And there's another thing. There's I acknowledge a financial limit to how many refugees we can take here if we allow all refugees to qualify for full welfare benefits.
Right.
That's pretty expensive. Now, I think I read recently about 20% of refugees are receiving substantial welfare. I talked to some Somalian refugees and I asked them, now, suppose you were allowed to sponsor members of your family that are still back in Somalia to come here
Mm-hmm.
on the condition that they would not receive welfare, but you would have to take care of them. They said, let us do it. They don't let us do that unless we're citizens. We're
Mm-hmm.
not citizens. We'd love to take care of our family here.
Mm-hmm.
And so under those conditions, I can't, we need the people of the world that are the most tired of tyranny and violence. We need them here helping us.
Well, they would most likely embrace our lifestyles and our way of life if they're escaping tyranny, and this is an obvious better environment for them. And I think a lot of people who are refugees, most of them come here and want to excel and want to do better. I mean, as soon as they step on American soil, they have a better life, and they want to improve that life. That's been proven over and over and over again with all the other immigrants and refugees who have come here.
As for assimilation being an issue, something as a factor that should drive our immigration policy, this is a topic that economists study, and I want to distinguish between undocumented economists and credentialed economists that actually cared enough about the subject to make that their major in college. In order to be an economist, you need to know calculus, and you need to know the kinds of functions, like you have a letter representing something. You need to know in economics what all those letters represent. You need to be familiar with them, so that because economic questions in research are expressed in calculus language. If you read the research of economists, you see calculus in there, and I have to skip over all that.
Mm-hmm.
But economists, see, if you're talking about how much taxes to the Congress should levy, or how bad our national debt is, there's controversy about that. But on the subject of immigration, economists have virtually no disagreement. They're within 2 or 3% in their calculations about the economic impact of immigration, and it's mostly positive. And whereas undocumented economists, if that's all we're listening to, we get this terrible idea that they don't assimilate, they just trash our economy. But on assimilation, there's an economist for the Cato Institute, Alex Naurasta, who has done a couple of studies that I've read about assimilation, and he found that the rate is about the same as it's always been. The first generation speaks only their native language.
Mm-hmm.
Second generation is bilingual, and the third generation is all English.
Yep.
And he's also done a study to find out that you see conservatives are the most vocal, the most public, the most unembarrassed anti-immigrants are Republicans, Republican conservatives. Unions are just about as, believe all these things, but they're not as, they're more embarrassed about going public with their opposition to immigration because they're aligned with the Democratic Party, which has put a more favorable face on it, or friendlier face. But
Well, don't immigrants take jobs away from union workers?
well, that's obviously where unions and conservative Republicans, restrictionist Republicans, agree, but economists don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
They point out, as the economist in the 2013 hearings pointed out, we're competing with people overseas. If we don't let people come here and work for a little bit less,
Mm-hmm.
the whole factory will go overseas where people work for a lot less.
Yep.
You can't. The gap is in our education, because, and the economists and even the undocumented economists recently have finally agreed, most population, most groups of citizens are affected favorably by immigration. And the only group that really has seen a slight job decline is high school dropouts. Our problem is not competition with immigrants. It's people being too uneducated to handle today's technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's an education problem. We need, if we want to solve that, we don't tell the Department of Homeland Security to keep out people we need to help us compete with the world.
Mm-hmm.
We tell the Department of Education to go fly a kite.
Yeah. Well, I hear a lot of people talking about how important it is that everybody has a secondary education, a college degree. That if you're an American citizen, you should have the right to it, and it should be free, and everybody should have a high. You have to have a high school diploma. You should get a college degree. But I think there's a need in this country. There's a huge need for people who aren't college educated. We don't need college educated people working at fast food places, or house cleaning, and even construction. I mean, there's not that huge need for it, but everybody needs an education. And like you said, there's a lot of high school dropouts. But even in high school, they're not teaching the basics. They're not teaching you what you need to know to survive in a environment where you don't need an education. You just need to be able to function in society.
Yeah. Years ago, I had some private time with a fellow named Samuel Blumenfeld, who came to Iowa to help organize a homeschool movement. This was clear back in starting around 1986. And he's the editor of New American Magazine, a John Birch magazine. Plus, he's also just an acknowledged leading expert on education. But anyway, his calculation is that an 8th grade education a century ago was about the equivalent of a high school graduation of the 40s, which is equivalent to a college degree of the 50s and early 60s, which is the equivalent of a master's degree of now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how precisely one measures things like that, but I've seen tests for elementary kids from the 1880s in a McGuffey reader that I would challenge college graduates to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Back to assimilation. One study by Alex Nalrasta found that immigrants don't even vote Democrat more than the general population.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Republicans tell each other, we can't let all these people come here. They're going to vote Democrat and wipe us out.
Yep.
It's not true. As they become citizens, the percentage who vote Democrat and who vote Republican stays indistinguishable from the level of our citizenry.
Right.
Neither Democrats nor Republicans have anything to fear from.
Right. Well, I mean, somebody who may have been a socialist or a liberal in another country would come here and see a different lifestyle and possibly vote conservative, and vice versa. I could see how that can happen. I actually know people who are immigrants in this country who came from communist countries. People who, I have a friend in California who was actually a politician in Romania when it was communist.
Wow.
And he is a hardcore conservative. I mean, he is the first person who told me the difference between a liberal and a conservative, and he described conservatives as the closest thing we have to communists in this country.
Did you just switch subjects, or did you just say something? I totally don't understand. Say that again.
He described liberals as the closest thing we have to communists in this country.
Oh, I thought you said conservatives.
Oh, I may have.
Okay.
I meant liberals.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. Okay. Yeah, my wife and I had quite a friendship with, had dinner several times with one of her students. Was a boy. The mother was Russian. The father met the mother in Russia, where he was working on oil contracts. And every Russian boy has to learn the accordion, the mother said. And we had interesting discussions with them. The father was Republican conservative, and the mother was very sympathetic to the old Soviet Union,
Mm-hmm.
and thought that it was wonderful that they provided houses for everybody.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big, but it was a house,
Mm-hmm.
and she hadn't learned her lesson. How do I say it? And but like you say, it happens both ways. People are human. They grow up. Young people are more vote Democrat more than old people, and Republicans attribute this to the fact that the Democratic Party offers ideals, wonderful things that sound wonderful, but that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a few years under your belt before you
Yep.
observe that they don't work.
Well, that could explain why somebody from Russia who comes to America leaves a socialist country or communist country and comes to America and sees how well everything works in America and thinks, well, it didn't work in Russia, but it could work here because look how much better off people are here. And they'd be even better off if they embrace some of the ideas, the socialist ideas of Russia. Here, everybody could have a house. You can afford it. We're, compared to the rest of the world, we're America's rich. So why couldn't they provide a house for every person?
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point is that we need to be free. It's about liberty. We need to be free to do what we want, and that comes with consequences.